Welcome back to more ReZero Arc 4. I feel like we're still barely into this arc. The last time we got to see Subaru take the first trial, and we got to see a lot of emotional scenes and backstory. And this time we'll see whether all of that is worthy of a passing grade. Wait, is that why they're in a school right now? Surely that wasn't planned. Whatever, let's go. You've arrived much earlier than I expected. Welcome. So you've had time to confront your past. What did it do for you? First off, there's something I'd like to say. You look pretty good in that uniform. Subaru keeping the right priorities here. Why, thank you. Hearing you say that tells me that recreating it from your memories was worthwhile. What is this place? As one who is qualified, you entered the graveyard. Thus the trial began. That's all there is to it. We learned last time that the trial doesn't start until night, but it doesn't really matter for this. He couldn't get into the trial before, even if he wanted to. He does have a witch factor, though, which supposedly got him into the Tea Party. But now he has the qualifications, so the trial kind of auto started as soon as we went into the room. And? Did I pass the trial? Having seen every moment of it, I think the results you achieved was more than suitable. Every moment? Wait, you... She likes to watch. I don't know why Subaru is so surprised by this. But seriously, as soon as he figured out that this was the trial, I mean, the only way that she is going to be able to judge it is if she watches his actions. So I feel like he shouldn't be surprised by this. Anyway, so this world is actually, that's right. It's a fabricated world that I created with utmost faithfulness to your memory. Everything, including your parents. Understand? You fabricated all that? Really? But some of the stuff was mentioned that even I didn't know. Are you sure you didn't know? Did you never once entertain the thought of your father being different in any way from what you'd pictured? Did you really think that you could hide the parts of your heart that you thought no one knew about? The desire to have them know so that you'd feel less of a burden. The selfish wish that they'd still love you, even if they knew. Could you state with certainty that you did not seek that from your imaginary parents? That would be far too idealistic, not to mention convenient. Don't you agree? I'm going to go ahead and jump the gun a little bit. Kidna is sadistic. We saw a little bit of it back when they first met, and really this instance isn't really all that bad, but it's kind of a introduction to her personality. She's already stated that she has a lust for knowledge, just mixing deadly sins. But she constantly wants to learn more, and it seems like she enjoys seeing how people react to different pressures, I guess would be a nicer way of saying it. And we'll see more of this going forward. Remember, in the web novel, Echidna says that she doesn't know anything about the trials, and that was obviously a lie. I mean, she even says so during this conversation that it was very much a lie, and it's kind of more evidence to her shitty personality. So the trial is created from Subaru's memory, and this is a little bit what I was talking about back when they were at the Tea Party. She knows that he killed someone with the witch factor, but doesn't know where Sanctuary is. I think she can see his memories. He hasn't been to Sanctuary yet at this point, so there's no way for her to get that information from him. And it would also explain how she knows that he killed someone to get the witch factor. I will say that's not 100% guaranteed to be correct. It's very possible that she knows he has a witch factor because he's at the trial and just made an educated guess that he killed someone who had it before and did it very recently. I will say that because of how the trials work, I lean more towards her also being able to see his memories while at the Tea Party. In the web novel, she claims that she doesn't look at all of his memories, just enough to do the trial. And I'm gonna go ahead and say I don't believe her for a fucking second. She's already been shown to lie before, and Subaru's memories are actually a gold mine for her. I mean, think about it. Subaru's memories are really good proof of another world, and that has got to be some good shit for her. I mean, it's not really brought up in any version. The web novel kind of does in reference to the clothes that she changed into, and that's really about it. It's been a while, but I don't remember the web novel ever bringing this up. I guess we'll see as I'm rereading it. And I feel like this is a big deal, especially for someone like Echidna. She has a thirst for knowledge, and this is a whole new world for her to learn about. So, yeah, I'm pretty convinced that she looked through all of his memories. Two more things from the novels. Echidna gets pretty excited talking about learning and all of that, so she ends up getting in Subaru's face, and apparently her breath smells like citrus fruit. Tachibana orange, to be specific. Just in case you wanted to know. Also, Subaru likes longer skirts because it leaves more to the imagination. And that is equally as important information as Echidna's breath, I guess. Don't make fun of my parents, Echidna. I gave all my answers, and both my mom and my dad accepted them. They told me to give it my all and to take care. Their voices, their smiles, and everything shattered what I had imagined. My parents are too big to fit in my puny imagination. Don't underestimate them. I told them everything I wanted to say. I'm not going to let anything you say sidetrack me. This trial is over, in the truest sense. I look forward to seeing how you handle the next question. What does that mean? There are more than one trial? There are 3 trials in total. You must pass all of them to free sanctuary. I'm so glad that I finally got to tell you. Seeing you so surprised makes my heart leap. See my previous statement on her personality. I think it's a little more obvious in the novels, but there's no answer for the trial. No single answer, I should say. Echidna just wants to see some conclusion, to see a person struggle and come to an answer. To some extent, it seems like running would also be an option. Subaru could have just decided to forget his past and move on, and Echidna also would have accepted that as an answer, as long as there is a definite conclusion. The only real way to fail is to not do anything. Seeing the trial, the hard parts of life, and not making a decision at all would end in failure. That type of running away is not allowed. So there are 3 trials, and spoilers here. It's going to be past, present, and future. And I feel like it probably could have been obvious whenever Subaru got the "first you must face your past" message. I actually think that Subaru's way of thinking hurts him in the trials later. He knows that him talking to his parents in this world didn't actually happen or anything, but he thinks that if he had the chance to do so, the results would have been the same. And I'm not saying that he's wrong. It's kind of hard to explain. He knows that it's fake, but he thinks that it's close to real. And that way of thinking is going to hurt him later on. And I'll explain more of my reasoning whenever we actually see it. It's already starting to disappear. If you go outside, you'll find yourself back in the graveyard. Hey, Echidna. What is it? You want me to let you hit me? You do have that right. It's true. But I'm a girl, and my face says, thanks. Even if they weren't real, even if I didn't get to say it to my real parents, it's thanks to you that I got to say what I wanted to say. So, thanks. You truly are a very intriguing human. I just can't comprehend you. It actually frightens me. It's an honor to know that I can frighten a witch. Subaru starts to walk off. Oh yeah, it sounded like you wanted me to go through the next trial, but I can't grant you that wish. I'm not the one who's going to pass the trials. Someone else is going to grant that wish for you. Is that so? I wonder. In my opinion, Echidna is not used to dealing with someone as stupid as Subaru. He focuses on the positives and just ignores the fact that she was very much trying to get to him. She was expecting him to want to hit her because that's kind of the normal reaction. People normally catch on quicker to her personality. In the web novel, Subaru never brings up Amelia. Echidna says that there's 2 more trials, and Subaru just says, okay, I'll do those 2. And thinking about it now, Subaru in the web novel is very much just trying to do everything on his own, even if he has to do it behind Amelia's back. And it's very different from the other versions. After Subaru leaves, there's a whole scene with Echidna and the Witch of Envy that's only in the web novel. And I'm not gonna talk about it. The web novel is fucking me up with how much it has switched everything around. Subaru wakes up with his face against the cold ground. Where? Oh, that's right. I went through the trial. He looks over to see Amelia on the ground. He tries to check on her, causing her to immediately wake up. Subaru? Right. I was undergoing the trial, And I'm. It wasn't me. It wasn't. And yet, I keep telling you, it wasn't me. Hey, calm down. Look at me, Amelia. No, don't look at me like that. No, no, it wasn't me. Father, help me. Puck. Amelia doesn't handle the first trial nearly as well as Subaru did. And it makes sense. It's tailored to each person, and each person is going to struggle with their past, present, or future differently than anyone else. And Subaru even admits that he's had a pretty cushy life, so his past isn't really that hard for him to deal with. I mean, it was, I guess, a big issue, but not nearly as much as what Amelia could have been going through. We don't know exactly what it is just yet. She's finally calmed down and is resting now. May I say something? It might be possible to get everyone outside the barrier without doing the trial. Why don't those of us who aren't affected by the barrier carry the others out while they're unconscious? An amusing idea, but one you'd be better off not trying. I would rather not be an empty shell. You're that girl. Ram interrupts him with a hot cup of tea. Avoid making unnecessary comments. She looks like the girl that Subaru saw whenever he got teleported. And Ram definitely knows something. I am Ryuzu Bilma. It is my duty to represent this community, though I am old and frail, as you can see. Ryuzu is an old lady, like a few 100 years old, actually. There is a reason for that, and it is directly tied to her appearance, and it will come up again later. Because she is an old lady, she calls Subaru Young Sue and Garfield Young Gar, and I think you could figure out the pattern from there. In the web novel, she doesn't go by this name. She goes by Louis Mayer, and that is going to be important for later. What makes you say my idea won't work? When one with mixed blood touches the barrier, it takes away their consciousness. More specifically, it repels their soul. That's why Amelia passed out whenever they went through the barrier. Her soul was basically separated from her body. Now, luckily, she was inside the barrier, so eventually it was okay and got reconnected, I guess. And none of the residents are about to risk that shit. The anime goes over the contract that the residents can't break the barrier. And I've already gone over it in the other version, so I'm not going to rehash it here. But Ryuzu does say that they can take the trial, it just won't do anything. This conversation with Ryuzu actually happens earlier in the novels. Like back when they first have the conversation with Roswell, she comes in there and kind of helps to explain the situation. And there's going to be some more events here in a minute that are out of order from the other versions. And I think I'm just going to wait until the end of this video and then have a huge list of all the differences. So hopefully I can clear things up then. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Morning. Sorry about yesterday. I really lost my composure in the graveyard. Don't worry about it. You can undergo the trial again tonight. Again? Tonight? Yeah, it's pretty obvious that she's not excited about retaking the trial. Remember, the first trial is about overcoming your past, basically. So there is something about her past that she is really struggling with, which means we will eventually get some of her backstory, but not anytime soon, especially with as slow as I am about making these videos. I need to tell you something, Barusu. Not all the residents are in favor of setting the sanctuary free. Only the heavy-handed people like Garf, led by Ryuzu, are the ones pushing for freedom. The conservative faction believes that having minimal interaction with outsiders is ideal. I get Garfield, but they don't even trust Ryuzu? Or Frederica either. It was Frederica who gave Amelia the glowing stone. Circumstantial evidence suggests that Frederica has some plan in mind. As it is, Amelia's escaped danger by a hair's breadth, thanks to your relatively noble sacrifice. You don't have to amend that. Just be careful, Borusu. To the ones who oppose setting the sanctuary free, the best way to assure they get what they want is to harm Amelia. You never know who might be your enemy. In the light novel, this conversation happened back when they were outside the church after they had talked to the villagers. They kind of combined those conversations. In the web novel, this information actually comes from Garfield. Subaru and Nato went to the graveyard to test whether Subaru had the qualifications. Garfield found them out there and basically walks them back and says that it's not safe for them to be out there because of the opposition group. All right, let's list out the problems so far, because this list is gonna keep growing. I'm gonna separate it out to sanctuary problems and mansion problems. So far, we've got trapped in sanctuary / trials, Garfield and Frederica. I'm gonna have those two separate since we don't really know enough about what they want. At this point, they could be working together or they could not. It's kind of hard to tell. I'm just going to go ahead and keep them as separate problems. The mystery group in Sanctuary that may be against Amelia taking the trial. I guess we'll call them the conservative faction since that's what Ram called it. And this is a terrible picture for them. We don't really have any pictures or anything shown of them, so I just kind of picked demi-humans to show this group. That's the reason I picked this. That night, Amelia goes to retake the trial. Everyone gathers at the graveyard. Come on, Ram, join us. She says nothing and turns away. The hell? You're no fun. Do you like Ram or something? Well, she's hot, ain't she? Nothing unusual about a guy being attracted to a strong, capable girl. Garfield is speaking my language. Strong, independent women are perfect. Is there something you want to do after getting out of the barrier? A guy who can come and go as he pleases wouldn't have a clue how the old hag and I feel. What about Frederica? Didn't she tell you a damn thing? She only said that she couldn't explain it to me because of some oath. Oath my ass. Talk about a handy excuse. Sounds just like her damn master. Roswell, in case that wasn't clear. It's a big hint for later. Are you and Frederica not even that close at all? If you're asking if we get along or not, nope, we don't. This conversation happened on their way to town in the novels, like back when they first got there. Anyway, when you were in the graveyard yesterday, didn't you... The lights in the graveyard go out, cutting the conversation short. Amelia walks out, crying. She's failed again. Well, let's add this to the list. Subset of the trials, Amelia can't get past the first one. And actually, I'm not going to add a picture for this. This list can get really full really fast if I put every little thing on here. So we'll just say that the trial includes both being trapped in Sanctuary and Amelia not being able to pass the trials. I see. That is unfortunate. Still, just learning that you can't lose your right to undergo the trial is something. Well, what did you call me in here for without Amelia to talk about? Just a bit of conspiracy. I'm not so big-hearted that I would invite someone who can't be trusted. Can't be trusted? Are you talking about Amelia? I'll go and spoil a little bit here. Roswell's not saying that Amelia could turn on them, therefore she can't be trusted. What he's saying is that he sees her as weak and that she can't handle a serious conversation. Be calm, Subaru. I would like you to continue to help and support Amelia as you always have. You don't have to ask me to do that. But what are you going to do? The same, naturally. I will give my utmost to help Amelia win the royal selection. What I mean to say is that we are partners in crime. Shouldn't you just say that we're partners? Quit playing dumb. Everyone knew the witch cult would start causing trouble when Amelia's participation was announced to the public. What the hell were you doing? You hid the information about the witch cult from Amelia, didn't you? She didn't know anything. If she had, everything would have been different. And if it had, you should have been there. If you had been protecting everyone, but you fulfilled my role in my absence. As a knight, your performance was commendable. Subaru gets up and tries to punch him, but is stopped by Ram. Calm down, Botosu. You're okay with all this? You were left behind at the mansion like a sacrificial pawn. I condone everything that Roswell did, no matter how I was treated, even if I was cast aside. That wouldn't change. Then you're fine with Rem being sacrificed for a stupid reason like that? I don't know who you're talking about, but the name of a stranger means nothing to me. Subaru really should have expected her to say something like that. I mean, I know that he is still struggling with this, but he has got to stop being surprised every time someone forgets Rem. I actually think that Ram is stepping in here to help Subaru. Even if Roswell was near death, which he's not, but even if he was, he could kill Subaru with very little effort. And Ram knows this. So I think she is stepping in here to make sure that Subaru doesn't get himself killed. At least that's the way it comes off to me. Why did I conceal information that I should have disclosed to Amelia? Why was I not there present at the mansion when the witch cult was preparing to attack? There is but one answer to all of these questions: to ensure that I would not have to confront the witch cult myself. I, personally, led these events to happen. After all, if I had solved the problems myself, there would be no way for Amelia nor you to claim any credit. It had a tremendous effect, did it not? Do you have any idea what you're saying? That's only how it looks in hindsight. Do you know how many people died because you weren't there and didn't tell anyone anything? I express my condolences for all those on our side who were lost. Or would you rather hear me apologize? No, 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 that's not it. If I was still useless trash that couldn't do anything, what would you have done? I had faith in you. I trusted that you would do anything in your power for Amelia. Give your best results to establish an alliance with Cruchet. Put your life on the line to stop the witch cult attack. And that you would complete all these tasks with excellence. What the hell do you know about me? When I last saw you, I was absolute trash. I only got a little less useless because of all the things that happened after that. Definitely not the right thing to say to Roswell. He just said that he set all of this up so that Amelia and Subaru could take all of the credit. And now Subaru is telling him that it also made him more useful. What made you believe in me? It appears tonight's conversation has reached its end. By the way, if you tell Amelia what we discussed, as if I could tell her. Even overcome by such outrage, deep down you understand that all is as it should be. That for the sake of her chances in the royal selection, it would not do to create friction between her and myself or the villagers. I knew that you would make a fitting partner in crime for me. Roswell knew about the witch cult attack, which really isn't that surprising. As Subaru said, everybody knew that the witch cult was going to do something. And he says that it was so that Amelia and Subaru could take all of the glory. And I'm calling bullshit. Subaru pointed it out himself. Roswell didn't say anything to Subaru or Amelia about the witch cult attack. If he wanted them to take the credit, he could have very easily prepared them for it. But he didn't, because that wasn't the actual reason. And to be clear, it probably was a little bit of the reason for him to hide away so that they can take some of the credit. But it wasn't the actual reason or the main reason that he did what he did. But we'll have to wait before we get more of that. There's another scene in the web novel. After Subaru leaves, Roswell pulls out a book. And it's not stated what this book is, but he does treat it kind of like Beetlejuice treated his gospel. And it's another thing that we'll have to wait and learn about later. I'm sorry, I failed again. You don't have to beat yourself up so much. I can tell that this has been hard on you, but I think that there's no point in freeing the sanctuary if you're not the one to do it. Think you can try again? Subaru, you jerk. When you ask with such gentle eyes and words, how can I say no? I'm not very smart, but I do know that this is my duty. Bet you thought I was going to say something about her intelligence, didn't you? Well, you're right. She's not super smart, but I also wouldn't consider her to be stupid. We'll learn more about her past and everything later on in the arc, but I think it's very clear that the issue is more of ignorance rather than a lack of intelligence. She just doesn't know a whole lot. And she's not very smart. Don't spoil me. Just believe in me. I mean, I know that I'm probably not very convincing right now. That's not true. I'll be waiting and believing in you. Good. Thank you. But I know I'll be causing trouble for the people of Arlem. That's the one thing I regret. About that, would you mind leaving all that to me? Alright. I won't start doubting you now after all this. I trust you. They do trust each other, and this is going to be important for later on. But it's very weird to me that they have just kind of moved past their fight that happened in the last arc. I mean, Subaru has only been back for a few days, and they've pretty much just kind of let all of that go. Subaru completely went back on all of his promises, and Emilia just kind of forgave him almost immediately. But I guess it does kind of go along with her naive personality. A few days later, the villagers are getting ready to go back. I'm impressed that you were able to convince Garfield. It took 2 whole days, though. He understands that since Emilia is already inside the barrier, setting the people of Arlen free won't really cause any problems. 3 days added to the timeline. The light novel says 3 days from the first attempt, and this pretty much lines up with the anime. There's the first day, and then the next day Emilia tries again, and then 2 days of convincing, so it's 3 days from the first attempt. The web novel actually shows this conversation. Subaru and Garfield both recognize that if the villagers stay there, then there's going to be problems with food or the villagers rebelling. And Garfield can handle them on his own, so it's less of a concern and more that he doesn't want to deal with it if he doesn't have to. I have a message from Roswell. If you're worried about having to face Frederica, turn to Beatrice and tell her this. Roswell said to ask the question. I don't know the details, but when Beatrice hears those words, everything will change. That's what Roswell said. Subaru, was I interrupting the conversation with Ram? Nah, we weren't talking about anything important. Besides, you take priority. That makes me really happy, but you should give priority to the villagers right now. May the blessing of the spirits be with you. The light novel is slightly different. Subaru and Garfield talk and they unite about fucking with Roswell's plans. Emilia then interrupts them, and while Subaru and Emilia are talking, that's when Ram shows up and gives the message. So actually, Subaru and Emilia hear the clue about Beatrice. Villagers are getting released, blessing from Emilia received, and now there is a path forward by talking with Beatrice. So things are going pretty well, all things considered. So let's see how it gets fucked up. Thanks for volunteering to take us as far as the barrier. It's fine, man. Anyway, Small Fry, you went through the trial at the graveyard, didn't you? I'm pretty sure this is what he was going to ask Subaru back when Emilia was taking the trial. He got interrupted by Emilia coming out, but it seems like this is what he wanted to talk about. You don't have to hide it, I can tell. And what's the point of asking me this? It's simple. You can go through the trial in Emilia's place. Is it really even necessary to overcome your past? I watched Emilia go through the trial. I saw how it broke her, and every time she comes back totally freaked out. I can't stand watching it. I have faith that Emilia can make it through the trial. You can expect what you want from her, but does she really want to overcome her past? When she cries about how scared she is, ain't that how she really feels? This is as far as I can take you. Confirmation on what the trials cover, but we kind of already knew that. This is also a hint that Garfield has taken the first trial. Not that it really matters a whole lot right now. I mean, even if he passed all 3 trials, he can't free Sanctuary anyway. In the web novel, Garfield lets them leave with the condition that Subaru take the trial whenever he gets back. He doesn't really care about Emilia or her problems. He's just trying to get the trials done. So he doesn't ask Subaru to do the trials himself, he makes him. Take this. I'm not going to tell you my reasons, but if you don't come back, we're the ones that are going to suffer. Show it to Frederica if push comes to shove. So apparently both siblings got matching crystals, and at least in the anime and the light novel, again, this crystal is not in the web novel at all. And in the anime, you could see him wearing it whenever he first shows up, so it was pretty obvious. In the light novel, it says it took them 8 hours to get from Sanctuary to the village, or 6 hours from the barrier when Garfield left to the village, which means it took them 2 hours to get from Sanctuary to the barrier? I realized they probably weren't sprinting through the forest or anything, but 2 hours? How big is the fucking barrier? Now, I don't know if that is just the anime. It doesn't make it feel like it's 2 hours once they cross the barrier, or if this is just a made up number. It doesn't actually match the geography or anything. It's kind of hard to say. It doesn't really matter all that much, but I just thought it was interesting that, according to the light novel, it is actually 2 hours from once you pass the barrier until you actually get to town. They drop everything off at the village. Subaru walks into the mansion, but no one is around. As he searches for the maids, he notices that every door is open, leaving him confused and worried. What about Rem? He runs towards her room. In the hall right before her room, he trips. Looking back, he sees a trail of blood leading to his stomach. As the loss of blood causes his consciousness to fade, he hears, "You promised, didn't you? That you would take good care of your bowels until we met again." Elsa stands over him, knife in hand. The second death. Let's see the problem chart. There you go, Elsa added. Just to be clear, he tripped over his intestines. Elsa cut him on the way by, and he started losing his organs before he even noticed he was cut, and they started to get tangled up in his legs. The anime kind of shows it, but it's very explicit in the novels. Okay, let's go over the different order of events. I'm going to put the events side by side so it's easier to see. Should I color code these? Yeah, that's better. Or not. There's some extra stuff on here that I was going to wait to talk about, specifically novel stuff. But I'm going to throw them in here real quick and talk about them in more detail when they come up in the anime later. Anyway, let's get started. I'll go through the anime real quick and then we'll talk about the differences with the other two. So they cross the barrier, Emilia passes out, Subaru gets teleported, and then he gets into the graveyard, has the tea party, and then when he gets out, Garfield attacks. So they go to Roswell, and Roswell explains the situation about them being trapped in the sanctuary, or being taken hostage, I guess would be a better way to put it. Then they go talk to the villagers, and then on the way out, Subaru talks with Ram, and it goes pretty quick. It's just her commenting on how Emilia has grown. Subaru and Emilia take the trial the same night, I think it is. And then Subaru passes, Emilia fails. And the same night, they have the group conversation, and this is where Ryuzu is finally introduced. Subaru talks with Emilia after she wakes up, and I think this is all still the same night. And basically just make sure that, and that's just kind of a normal talk. I don't think anything important was said there. The next morning, Subaru talks with Ram, and she is the one to introduce the conservative group that he needs to watch out for. Emilia takes the trial again that night and fails. So Subaru talks with Roswell and Ram, and that's where Roswell talks about how he knew about the witch cult and all that stuff was going to happen. And then Subaru goes and talks with Emilia about retaking the trial, making sure that she's okay and convincing her to keep trying. He then not the next morning, but a couple of days later, they leave Sanctuary, and on the way out, Garfield talks with him about Subaru taking the trial instead of Emilia, and then Subaru gets back to the mansion and fucking dies. The light novel version is pretty similar. They're just a little bit out of order. It's pretty much the same until we get to the talk with Roswell. So the very first talk with Roswell, he explains the situation about them being held hostage, and this is where Ryuzu actually comes in. While they're sitting there talking, she comes in and is basically there with Garfield to say that they are both the reason that they're being held hostage. After talking with the villagers, Subaru talks with Ram, and this conversation is actually combined with the two conversations that happen in the anime. So she comments on how Emilia has grown, and she also throws in the part about the conservative faction being a problem. Both the novels skip over Emilia taking the trial for the second time. So those conversations that happened during the second attempt happened during the first attempt. She did try to take the trial every single night. I mean, they were there for, I think three. What did I say earlier? Three? Yeah, we'll say 3 nights. She tried to take the trial every single night. So it's They basically just didn't show it, whereas the anime showed the first and second nights. But during for each version, she did try every single night. Um, and then the conversation with Roswell and Ram, Roswell actually brings up knighting Subaru. And this is something that's only happened in the novels. And the anime, he kind of brings it up like very, very quickly because he says that it's that he performed as a knight should, basically. Which to me, when I was watching the anime for the first time, didn't really come off as him suggesting that he was a knight. It kind of came off as more of him poking Subaru, which kind of added to the reasons why he was angry. But in the novels, he just straight up says, like, hey, we will make you, I can make you a knight after all of this. So we can just fix this problem of you pretending to be a knight and you can just actually be one. So this was something that comes up later in the anime anyway, but it's interesting to see that it was introduced this early in the novels. In the light novel only, Subaru asks about Beatrice, but it doesn't really come to anything because Roswell just says, now it's not the time for that. But it does kind of introduce this now, and it makes more sense as to why Ram gives him that hint later on before they leave Sanctuary. The talk with Amelia is a little bit different. He brings up that he knows that there's three trials and what's in the trial, and Amelia is rightfully confused by this because he really shouldn't know. But Subaru just lies to her and said that someone else told him about it. So getting off on the right foot there of talking about trust like they did in the anime, and then here he goes lying in this version. Now, the web novel is where everything just is completely different. So they cross the barrier, but there's no crystal in the web novel version. So Amelia passes out, but no one is teleported. They just cross the barrier, and that's it. So Garfield attacks them there and brings them back to Roswell. And Roswell just doesn't explain the full situation and because he first wants Amelia to make sure that she is qualified. So they go to the graveyard so that they can check. And while they're there, Subaru goes in first, and this is where he has the tea party, and the other witches are introduced. And by that, I don't mean like in the other versions. In the anime and the light novel, they're just talked about. But in the web novel, they actually show up. And this is something that happens in the other versions, but it happens way earlier for the web novel. And this is crazy when you actually are reading it, like if you didn't know the story, because he meets Echidna, and then not even 2 minutes later, he starts meeting the other witches. So it's basically, oh yeah, I'm a witch, but I'm not that bad of a witch. Here, look at these other witches. See, it's just I'm glad that they changed this to push this part back to later because I feel like it's a lot to introduce this early on in the story. In this version, he also remembers at least part of the tea party. He can't really talk about it, but he remembers that he got the qualification. So the next morning, he goes and checks to make sure that he has the qualifications and all of that. And during that time, Garfield comes and catches them whenever they're like, whenever Subaru is walking out, and he doesn't say anything. He doesn't like say that he notices that the lights were on or anything. But this is where the conservative group is introduced. So Ram is not the one that does it in the web novel. It's actually Garfield, and he's kind of like looking out for them and says, like, "Hey, you shouldn't be out here, you know, this early in the morning by yourself because you could get attacked." That's kind of the implications of what he says whenever he's escorting them back to everyone else. Also, I guess the fact that Amelia doesn't take the trial on the first night might throw the timelines off. I'm not Nothing in the anime or the light novel says that it was the next night when Amelia took the trial the first time. So my guess is that it was the first night. But the web novel is very clear that they don't do anything the first night. So I'm not completely sure on the timeline of those of the three different versions here. I'm gonna stick with them taking the trial for the first time on the first night that they're there, but I guess I could be wrong. While Amelia is taking the trial, before Subaru goes in to take it, Ryuzu actually says that she's taken the trial twice. It's kind of supposed to be the indication that you can't lose the qualification to take the trial and that nothing bad is going to happen to you if you fail it. But this is crazy considering some of the stuff in that's supposed to be in the future for why some things are happening. So this is going to be interesting to see how that plays out for the future. It's definitely going to be different than the other from the anime version that I remember. Okay, so after the trial, when Subaru leaves, the Witch of Envy shows up within the little dream world as it's disappearing, and they, her and Echidna basically have like a quick talk. I don't really know. There's not a whole lot of information there to glean from, but they start to fight, and Echidna just runs away basically, and then Segment shows up, and she is able to beat the Witch of Envy, which she even remarks that because the Witch of Envy is sealed in a castle or sealed away, maybe not in the castle, she's sealed away far away from here. A lot of her power she can't use. So Segment is actually able to beat her here and push her back. Um, because I don't remember if I've talked about this or not. The the power scaling on the witches are is very one sided. So obviously the Witch of Envy is the strongest. She can beat all the other witches without an issue. And Segment is second strongest, and she can beat all the witches below her just as easily. So the top two witches there, the Witch of Envy and the Witch of Sloth, are pretty much the powerhouses of the witches. The other ones are strong, but they are nowhere near the power of those two. And we know that now that since Echidna, or not Echidna, the Witch of Envy, because she is sealed, a lot of her power she can't use. And it's enough that the power levels of between the top two are pretty similar, and the Witch of Sloth is able to push her back. The group conversation is a combination of a few different conversations in the other versions. So Amelia wakes up and then joins them in this version, and this is where he convinces her to keep taking the trials. But during this conversation, he says that he took the trial and passed it, and that there are more that still need to be taken. And this is very different from the other versions. In the other version, he doesn't say shit about him taking the trial. And this does come up later on, but it doesn't really feel like it fits for this version. Because what happens is he says, "Oh, I've taken the trial. I can, and there's two more, and I can take them. And I'm also going to take them." And Amelia isn't really upset by this at all. She kind of takes it as a challenge, more of a, okay, you're going to take it, and I'm also going to take them. And I don't know, it just doesn't really fit to me, especially considering what we see later on in the other versions. I don't really think her, that is where she is mentally at this point in the story. I think it's much more likely that she would be freaking out about it rather than just being as cool about it as she is in the web novel. So I'm glad that they changed this. I'm not a huge fan of him. Him admitting it is fine, but I don't think it really matches up with later versions of what are going to happen. So I'm not a fan of the web novel discussion here. I think the other versions do it better. A few days later, Subaru wakes up early to go have his talk with Garfield. And this entire talk is there, and it's basically them talking about how it's not good for either side to have the villagers trapped. So they agree to let everyone leave under the condition that Subaru take the trial. So in the other versions, Garfield goes with them, which in this version he also goes with them to the barrier, but they don't have the same discussion. Like the talk about in the anime, in the light novel, Garfield basically asks Subaru to take the trials instead of Amelia, whereas in this version, in the web novel version, he just straight up says, "I'm only going to let the villagers leave if you agree to take the trials." And again, it seems weird because they go from talking about Subaru and Amelia both taking the trials, and then this discussion with Garfield happens days later. And up to that point, Subaru hasn't retaken or hasn't taken the second trial at all. He's waiting for Amelia to catch up, to beat the first trial. I'm not really sure what he is waiting for, but it seems weird to me that they were all like gung ho about Subaru, or they're okay with Subaru taking the trial, and then days later, and they just haven't done, he hasn't done anything to progress in that. And during this conversation with Garfield, he even says, like, he is basically waiting for her. So it just seems really weird considering the anime and the light novel versions. I just think they do it so much better. And yeah, so Subaru does agree that he will start taking the trial at this point in order to free the villagers. But as we know, he goes and dies, so none of this actually matters that much. So the web novel version is much more about Subaru trying to force himself into the situations and doing things instead of Amelia. Whereas the other versions, he's trying to let her accomplish things on her own. And now that I'm looking at this, I realize they just cut out all the talks with Ram. There's no discussions with her about anything. And I don't even think that she is in the discussion with Roswell whenever he talks about how that he knew about the witch cult and all that. So I guess she is there, but they they took away all of her little side conversations that they had. Hopefully that cleared up all of the different order of events. So next time we will see how far back he is going to get reset this time. See ya.